Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask anything that you like about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. Uh-oh, no audio on the TikTok live stream. I'm gonna have to fix that real quick. Alrighty, we should have audio now. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. This is the Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. What's up, Blanca Falcon? Everybody, welcome. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I am not here to judge or roast or debate anybody. I am just here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. Terrence, what's up? The wife is doing good. The kid is still inside the wife. We are anxiously awaiting the arrival of the kid. To everybody else, welcome. Well, we just got Mikhail. Good to see you again. Thank you for being here. Oh, has my YouTube thing working again? All right, fantastic. YouTube comments are back up. All right, to everybody else, welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. There's no such thing as a dumb question, so you can go ahead and ask away, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language, so this is the show where you can ask all of your questions about politics and nobody's going to judge you or roast you or debate you or anything like that. What's up, N5RTN? Good to see you as well. So any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. What is up, D. Scott? Good to see you again. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. Mr. Meme says, what do you think about a wealth tax? I'm for it. Olcac says, opinion on UK politics. I don't know a lot about UK politics. The only thing I know is never vote Tory, never vote Reform. All right. Everybody's welcome here. Republican, Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I know there's a lot of really popular shows out there where people argue and yell at each other and call each other names over politics. And that is not what this is. This is not a debate show. This is not a fighty show. This is not a show for, people to win or get owned or anything. This is just good faith answers to all of your good faith politics. Mr. Meme says, and German politics? Again, I don't know much. I just know never vote for AFD. Eriskumquat says, are you for or against tariffs on Chinese EVs? That's a really good question, and I'm actually not 100% sure. My position is pretty nuanced on that. Like, I want the BYDs because they're really good, inexpensive cars, but there are national security concerns and where we don't want to be undercutting every American auto producer by introducing something so much better and cheaper into the market, but also maybe American car producers need to be better. Like, are we adhering to strict free market capitalism standards? Yeah, I kind of think that right now we're in a climate emergency, and so maybe the best thing we can do is introduce a bunch of affordable, really good EVs into the American market, and then we can try to, tax the wealthy and use that money to help the American auto industry struggle to compete against China. Let me know what you think about that, Eris. James Danhauer says, abolish the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, make APAC register as a foreign agency. Term limits. I'm for term limits, but because APAC is funded with American dollars, they do not have to register as a foreign agency. You will never hear me say a kind word about APAC, but they really are not legally obligated to register as a foreign agency. I also know what the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 has to do with anything. Stephen Peterson says, I heard the waterways open again. Do you think this is the right direction to be done in Iran? I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I doubt that the Trump administration is responsible for this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's a moving target. I feel like the Trump administration has fucked up so much already that even if we ended the war today and trade just went back to regular, that there would still be such incredible damage that he is exclusively responsible for. Ryan says, "What do you think of NYC right now?" I think it's great, and I wish that I was still living there because it looks like Mamdani's making great changes. Latub Online says, "Do you think Israel has a right to exist and defend itself?" Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we should continue to send them money and weapons. Reese says, "Do you think ICE is bad?" Yes, I do. What's up, Lady Lisa? Dan Gen X says, "Still much less damage in the Democrats have caused in the past 5 years." So that is pretty inaccurate, Dan Gen X. Would you like me to go into more detail on that? Jack Fisher says, "I've always been neutral in politics, but I have to vote blue in 28. What about 26? Jack Fisher, I think you should also vote blue in 26. Strangleton says, "Thoughts on Palantir?" A massive private data collection agency that is going to spy on American citizens. That is closely aligned with the fascist Trump administration. Yeah, I don't think that's good at all. Reese says, "Why do you think ICE is bad?" ICE is kidnapping people, detaining them illegally. They are murdering people. There's credible reporting that they are SAing people. They are deporting people to countries that they are not from. Yeah, there's just like it feels so small to describe their actions that way, but that is like, you know, like how are you supposed to respond when a federal agency is like murdering people? You know, Strangleton says, "What's your suggestion for an alternative to the two-party system? Ranked choice voting." Liam says, "Trump is the only one trying to bring peace." That is wildly inaccurate, Liam. I don't think that you're really here in good faith. So let's go ahead and boot you right now. Ben says, "Do you think Trump will be impeached? If Democrats win the midterms, yes. If they don't, no." Stephen Peterson says, "Do you think JD would be an okay Republican president if he moves away from MAGA?" No, I don't trust him. I don't trust him one tick. Megalodon Corp says Trump is causing violence. That is accurate. NRC says, "Which Republican would you be most in favor of running for president in 28?" I don't know if there's a good Republican politician out there. Like maybe Thomas Massie, but again, if you're a Republican, you are caping for trickle down economics. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work. So I view you as completely invalid if that is still your economic philosophy. Mikhail Meme says, "Who's the best Republican politician in your opinion?" I mean, you're asking me to choose between, different piles of shit, Rocholi says, "Why is the international law useless?" Laws are only as good as the mechanisms by which we enforce them. And because America and other world powers have sort of like neutered the UN and the ICC, it means that we're not able to administer any kind of justice when people break international laws. Megalodon Core says trickle down equals billionaire welfare. That is 100% accurate. GD says, "I like ACP. What's your opinion?" I don't know what ACP is. Do you mean APAC? I don't know what that is. Zod says, "If I close my eyes, I can hear Destiny." I don't sound anything like Destiny. Stephen Peterson says, "Curious, why don't you trust JD? He seems less radical than Trump, and Iran would only speak with him." He's gone back on so many things that he has said in the past for political expediency. He is actively attempting to gaslight the American public into thinking that Iran is not a massive problem, that Trump is not massively corrupt and incompetent. Yeah, I mean, I have seen no reason to trust him. He called Trump Hitler and then has openly been caping for him ever since he became the vice president. He's allowing the president to have a cryptocurrency and sell political pardons. Like, I view he is one of the least trustworthy, least charismatic, and smarter than Trump, but not nearly as smart as he thinks he is. What he's doing is not working. I think the smartest thing that he's done in recent memory is decide to suspend his campaign for president in 28 because he recognizes how he would get fucking trounced. Carmine says, "The path of the righteous man thoughts." I know everybody's given, what do you call it? I know everybody's given Pete Hegseth shade for saying that quote as though it was actually from the Bible, but I thought that was a real Bible verse for a long time. I think the weirder thing is that he is giving religious speeches to the military and framing military engagement as being like a righteous religious war, which is not really the best tactic when we are trying to fight religious extremism in other countries. What is up, John Abbott? Great to see you again. Mick says, I was about to mention the Pulp Fiction thing, LOL. C. Westrom says, do you think we should keep the borders as Biden had them? I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by that. C. West, like, people sometimes will say that Biden had open borders, but that is factually inaccurate. So I think that there are changes that should have been made to our immigration policy. And they would have been made if Trump had not told the Republican Party to kill the bipartisan immigration bill. So, it's like Biden was serious about doing something about the border crisis. He worked on it. He got a bipartisan agreement. And then Trump killed the bipartisan agreement because he wanted to run on immigration as an issue to get elected. And I'm sorry, but I think that it is completely invalidating. I think that if you are willing to throw good legislation under the bus because it's politically advantageous to you, I don't think you're really interested in solving this problem. If you are rounding up people who have done absolutely nothing wrong and just holding them in detention for months, like, you don't really care about solving immigration. You're just trying to round up a bunch of brown people. Let's see here. John Evans says, did you see Spirit Airlines is going through bankruptcy? I did not see that. Their plan was to honor all flights that seats have been sold for, but stop selling new tickets. But the oil prices may be pushing them into rapid liquidation. Jesus fucking Christ, man. Yeah, things are fucking weird in the economy, in Trump's economy. CWS says, you're saying Biden worked on border control. Yeah, he did. There was a bipartisan border bill. CW, are you not aware of that? CW says, dude, you did not just say Biden tried to improve border control. You're wild. So you don't really care about facts, CW. You're just here to start a fight. Okay. Bean McBean says, do you believe in the Talmud or the Old Testament? I don't believe in any religious thing. I am an agnostic. Treeman 250 said, allowed 20 million in unvetted. That is inaccurate. Let's see here. Yeah, CW, you're going to go ahead and get blocked. See you later. Okay. Austin Bacchio says, it's the Grapers time. Let's hope not. They're not great. Van Cole says, should women vote? Yeah, everybody should vote, Van. Isn't it weird that people think that women shouldn't have rights anymore? That seems pretty weird to me. Sleepy, I don't have any opinion on Arby's, so please stop spamming the comments with that. Carmine says, type of comments that get you a strike on your live. I mean, but I didn't put that, John, John, that's very sweet. You're gonna make me blush over here. Taylor says, which UK party do you like the most? I like the left-leaning parties, so Labour and the Greens. More specific than that, I cannot tell you. Lift with Walter says, are we cooked? Fam, with the war. Oh, yeah, we are cooked. Austin says, you can't call it a movement if you don't have motion. These people don't have motion. Don't know really what you mean by that, Austin. It's the Grapers time. Do you think that the Grapers have motion? Or you don't think the Grapers have motion, Austin? Okay, Ms. is going to be all right. Great to see you again. Says, have you heard MAGA calling Grapers and others the woke right? I've heard that phrase being tossed about, bandied about, but I don't think it has any substance behind it. Average Joe says, what's this about the motion of the ocean? Yeah, your guess is as good as mine, man. Taylor says, mid, to be frank. I'm not a fan of both of those, but I don't know where I am on the compass. So, Taylor, I don't know a ton about UK politics. All I can tell you is that right-wing parties are lying to you. Right-wing parties are aligned with the billionaire class and with the fascists of the world, and so you should run from them. Okay, Mail says, what is your favorite political ideology? I'm a progressive Democrat. Austin says, the Grapers have motion. I don't think that they do, Austin. I don't think that it is a good political philosophy, the Grapers. Stephen Peterson says, who do you think is more handsome, Gavin Newsom or Pete Hegseth? LOL. I mean, I think Gavin Newsom, and even if we're just, if we're not even taking the personality into consideration, which if we were, Gavin Newsom would fucking mog Hegseth like around the block. But Hegseth has that weird like just like way too clean look, So yeah. I mean, we shouldn't be judging our politicians based on how they look. Mikhail says, did you answer my question before? If so, I did not pay attention. Sorry about that, Mikhail. 126 says we need to remove liberals from the U.S. No, that's not a question. So go ahead and ask a question, or I will boot you. Same thing with you, Mael. John says you look like you would be in a Celtic or fantasy movie. Ooh, thank you, John. I appreciate that. I am getting so many fewer questions about politics and so many more I'm getting trolled and complimented in exchange. Poop Circus says, "What if you gets kirked? Do you think? Wait, are you saying that? What if I get kirked? I don't think anybody should get kirked if we're using that as a what do you call it? If we're using that as a what's the word I'm looking for? If we're using that as a verb." Kim Buckman, D. Scott, and Tank, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Mail says, what the fuck, man? That's not a question, Mail. New Republican says, do you support open borders? No. And also the borders were not open during the Biden administration. Just think that that's important that we clarify that. Stephen Peterson says, how is RFK doing? I haven't heard anything about him since the crazy Tylenol claim, LOL. Nothing good. I mean, you know, we have skyrocketing measles cases here in America. We have very low vaccination rates here in America. He is not getting the chemicals out of food. They are removing restrictions on PFOS and forever chemicals and making it illegal to sue, you know, what do you call it? The companies that are producing pesticides that are giving people cancer. So yeah, he ain't fucking making shit healthy. Mayo says, what's your opinion on the U.S. sanctions on Cuba? I'm against them. They're not working. They haven't worked for a long time. And, you know, it seems like we were really making progress with Cuba during the Obama administration, and then Trump just undid all of that progress. New Republican says, do you know what a woman is? Generally, but, you know, it's a little bit more complicated than just who has boobs and who no. New Republican says, do you think men can have babies? I mean, if a woman transitions into a man, then yeah, a man can have a baby. John Durbin says, do you think the Democrats will win in 28? They will if people do the work to get them elected. They will if we're able to stop Trump and the Republican Party from stealing that election. Zach says, bro, stop. No. Let's see here. John says, what is kirked? So I'm not saying this. I think this is something that somebody said in the chat, which is, you know, Charlie Kirk got assassinated very unjustly, tragically. He was assassinated. I believe that some people are using that as a verb to mean political assassination. Okay, let's see here. New Republican says, do you believe in killing for-term babies, sir? No, I do not. And nobody does, actually. People who do are murderers. There's no state in the union, not even the bluest states, that makes it legal to kill full-term babies. Rick says, well, you got gray hair. Do you say gray hair or great hair? Because I think I have both great hair and gray hair. I love having gray hair. I think it's very distinguished looking. Mail says, what do you think is the last war the U.S. had a valid reason taking a part of? Probably World War II, you know? Okay, let's see here. Brando says, thoughts on Brett Kavanaugh? A terrible Supreme Court justice, should be removed, should be impeached. Yeah, not a good guy. Really wish that the FBI had actually followed up on some of those grape allegations, you know? Okay, let's see here. Stephen Peterson says, I understand what's happening in Iran. It's crazy, but what's the U.S. beef with Cuba? So that's a pretty massive question. I don't feel fully qualified to answering it, but I'll do my best. America has had a complicated and contentious relationship with Cuba for a really long time. And for 60 years, our solution to that was to completely sanction Cuba and limit all goods and travel betwixt there. It really has not done anything except for hurt the civilians that are living in Cuba. During the Obama administration, they tried a different tact and they negotiated normalizing relations with Cuba, and it was working. Like, it was actually changing Cuba for the better, for the betterment of the Cubans, and changing the government to not be bad. But then they only had like a year of that, 2 years of that before Trump came in and threw that all in the garbage, and then, and now we're back to just punishing the citizens who are living in Cuba instead of actually trying to change the government for the better over there. Alrighty, John Evans says, don't forget making weird shirtless and jeans workout videos with Kid Rock, 100%. Average Joe says, where are all these right-wing Eurobots coming from? Did the increased humidity wake Asmongold's cockroaches? Yeah, potentially, man. I don't know. I think that we got like low numbers today on TikTok, and I think that is being backfilled with a bunch of right-wing bot accounts. Big Bick Energy says, do you think the USA are the bad guys now? I don't think that America itself are the bad guys, but the American government is currently being controlled by bad guys. And so the American government is doing bad things. The American government is the bad guys right now. All right, Clemmy says, do you regard Antifa as a terrorist organization? No, Antifa isn't even an organization. Okay, NL says, IK right, but not a bot. Why are you right wing? NL order. Let's see here. New Republican says, was there election fraud, manipulation, or cheating anywhere in 2020? If there was, it was statistically irrelevant, like 0.00001%. And that's not me that's saying that, New Republican. That's the Heritage Foundation, and the Heritage Foundation is an extremely right wing organization. So they are not like, incentivized to make shit up. All right, let's see here. And else, I just think it's the best way to protect my country. What country is your country? New Republican says, did the Democrats know about Swalwell? I don't know who knew what about Swalwell, but I think it's illustrative that once those allegations were out there, then we got rid of them. Whereas there are all these allegations about Trump and a bunch of people in the Republican Party that Republican politicians don't really seem to give a shit about. New Republican. NL says the Netherlands. Well, I can't really speak to the politics in the Netherlands. I would just say that immigrants are not causing your problems in the Netherlands. Billionaires are causing your problems. And there are going to be right-wing parties that are going to tell you that immigrants are causing your problems, and they're lying to you. Mayel says, what's your opinion on Harris? Israel, two left, two right. So talking about Harris is difficult because she never really had an opportunity to do anything. She only had 100 days to mount her campaign, so we never really got at the core of what her campaign messaging was. So we don't really know what her main issues were. She kind of had to equivocate on a bunch of topics because she was walking a very delicate line. And so, I kind of believe that Democratic politicians are more progressive than they let out, than they are allowed to message, because they're worried about offending voters in swing states or being labeled by Fox News as being radical communists. So Barack Obama, I think, was more progressive than he governed. I think that Kamala Harris is probably more progressive than she ran. And Biden, we saw evidence. We know that Biden was more progressive than he campaigned, because he campaigned as the centrist in 2020 and he governed as a progressive. All right, Zach says, who would you like to run for office in 2028? Well, first, Democrats need to win the midterms in 26, Zach. That's the most important thing. After that, I like Chris Murphy for 28, but I am open for any Democrat who is dope. Smokey says, have you read the Constitution yet? Yeah, I've read the Constitution. Yeah, Smokey, I don't really think that you're here in good faith. But ask a question. Let me know. Big Boy Job Partner says, is the Heritage Foundation America's AIPAC? No, AIPAC is America's AIPAC. The Heritage Foundation is just another extremely well-funded right-wing, lobbying organization. Let's see here. Michael Matter says, Joe Biden was a self-described Zionist, so don't think he was a progressive. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to defend Joe Biden's policy towards Israel. Like, I think that was a massive mistake. But your attitude towards Israel is not the only thing that makes you a progressive. Like, taxing the rich and using that money to help everybody else is progressive. Strengthening unions and walking the picket line is progressive. Lowering healthcare costs is progressive. Yeah, he was a progressive president. The largest investment in green energy in our nation's history. That's some progressive shit right there. NL says United States of Israel. So that's not a very productive comment, NL. So please don't put that anymore. Jonathan W. Wright says, guess my question don't fall under the anything. What was your question? I didn't see it. Clemmy says, what do you think the next administration should do to fix relations with the EU? I mean, that's a difficult question. We've done so much damage to that relationship. And first of all, Triska and D. Scott, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. I think reestablishing, a positive relationship with the EU is going to take a lot of work. It's going to take us giving more than we take. Jonathan W. Wright says, is there any hope of ending the G in Palestine before it fully happens? Not under the Trump administration. And so if that is something you're interested in, you should definitely support and vote for Democratic candidates. Paul D. Schreiber says, FDR, Teddy Roosevelt were progressive. They are the bar I set for candidates. Oh, yeah. Well, Paul, are you, a lot of people were saying that Biden was the most progressive president that we've had since FDR, or at least his administration was the most progressive that we've had since FDR. What do you think about that? Nikki 3 says, what are you talking about? It's done, basically. What's done, Nikki? Dave Marr says, why do we need to have relations with the EU? They have been taken from us for decades. I don't believe that's accurate, Dave Marr. It was relationship. So they do a little bit for us. We do a little bit for them. Yeah, I do not believe that was a toxic relationship. I believe that was a mutual relationship. That was a copacetic relationship. Dave Marr says, well, it's a balance. Yeah. Maybe there were some things that needed to be reconfigured, but for the most part, we were fucking making out like bandits based on our relationship with the EU. And Trump is basically completely fucking ruining that. Triska, Kim Buckman, Tink, and Connie, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. Okay, where are we going to now? Finger hearts, the best part of the day. Zach says, do you think the Federal Reserve needs to go? I have not heard a substantive argument for that. Paul D. Shriver says, only by comparison was Biden progressive. Bernie would have been better. I don't argue that at all, Paul D. Biden was not my first, second, or third choice in the primary. Average Joe says, have you seen the lib whisperer Ezra Klein finally acknowledging Israel's absolute domination of the Palestinians? I haven't seen Ezra doing any about faces recently, but I'm definitely interested in that. He is like, one of the worst offenders of the literati left not fucking getting it. Tink, Kim, Triska, Connie, thank you for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal of the day. Let's see here. Okay, Mikhail says, what's your opinion on communism? If you define it as workers owning the means of production, then I'm for it. John Abbott says, thoughts on Todd Lyons resigning from his position as acting ICE director? I'd like to get a little bit more information about that. I don't know too much about Todd Lyons, but I am really curious as to what his stated reasons are and what his history as acting ICE director has manifested in. Like, has he actually done anything, Okay, Paul D. Schreiber says, I consider it good that a lot of countries are walking away from Israel and their government. I completely agree with that, Paul. Let's see here. Dave Marr says, but Biden got 80 million votes? He did. Dave Marr, do you really think that there was voter fraud in 2020, but then Democrats, once they got control of the government, just decided to stop doing it, Dave Marr? Victor says, what are your thoughts on uncapping the House of Representatives? What do you mean by uncapping? Do you mean like expanding it, like adding seats? If that's what you mean, then I am for it. Triska says, do you think foreign adversaries are killing or taking our scientists? I don't know what to make of that story about all the scientists getting got, but yeah, that is fucking terrifying. My guess is that has something to do with nuclear fusion technology or some sort of free energy that the fossil fuel industry doesn't want or something. I don't know, man. Ian says, thoughts on Zohar Mamdani? I'm for him. He's dope as hell. Fredo says, thoughts on AI, Trump, Jesus, and the fight between the Pope? I mean, this Pope is dope, so I don't really understand. I mean, the thing with Trump is he's so blatantly doing favoritism. Like if you say nice things about him, he will say nice things about you, regardless of if you are a dictator or literally Mother Teresa. And if you stand up to him and you are not a far right leader like Kim Jong Un, then he will go to the mat and say, like, you are the worst fucking piece of shit on the planet. Even if there is nothing, even if there is no there, he will make shit up. And so, again, just further evidence of this guy being a fucking snowflake, completely substanceless. If somebody that I didn't like, somebody that I had like a lot of admiration for, like Chicago Pope, said something mean about me, I wouldn't then go, well, that guy sucks. I'd be like, I mean, he's still dope as hell. I don't know what I did to piss him off. Kobe says Trump is the real life Homelander. I mean, I believe the writers of The Boys have said so. I think that they've said, like, we have modeled Homelander after him. It's not subtle at all. Ian says, do you think Congress or the cabinet is going to initiate impeaching / removing Trump from office soon? I don't think so. I don't think the Republican Party has that kind of moral fortitude. It appears as though they only do what is good for them or what is politically convenient. And so it would take some strength and guts to stand up to Trump, and they just don't. They don't. They don't. They either are too scared of him or they are equally as corrupt as him. And so, yeah, they're not going to do that. The Majestic Majest says, remove Burr from your second name and put P instead for N. I don't know what word you're trying to spell there, the Majest. Paul says, love Zoran, elected leader doing materially good things for constituents against the elites. Yeah, love him. Spyro says, can you please answer my question? I got to look for it. Goes the Gozarian says, do you think McMorrow is taking money from AIPAC to split the Michigan vote? I don't know anything about that primary, so sorry about that. Spyro says, what did the Democrats do after they found out about Watergate? I don't know. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Misanthropy, is that some SS shit that you're posting about? Because that's some real not great shit if that's what you're doing. Let's see here. All right, John Abbott's got information for us about Lyons. Lyons has been hospitalized twice in the last 6 months for stress-related health issues that reports say both followed screaming matches with Miller. He tendered his resignation yesterday, effective in May. He has been the acting director since March last year because he couldn't pass a Senate confirmation, even with the GOP basically rubber stamping nearly everyone at the time. That is so interesting. Why were Republicans not confirming Todd Lyons? That's so strange to me. Kim Buckman, Tank D. Scott, Triska, and Muzz King, thank you so much for helping me reach, I think that was my second Finger Hearts goal of the day. Yeah, I'm really curious about that. I mean, anybody who's going toe-to-toe against Stephen Miller, I can't imagine that they are, if Stephen Miller's like, I want to deport this many brown people, regardless of if they are here legally or not, regardless if they've done any crimes or not. And Todd Lyons was like, no, you need to do more than that. And so, yeah, I don't know. He's probably somewhere on the piece of shit spectrum, but I don't know if anybody is a bigger piece of shit than Stephen Miller. So probably better than not. A dishwasher says, are you a commie? No. Average Joe says, do you think comparing Trump's administration to an entitled 16-year-old Nepo baby crying because daddy didn't buy them a Range Rover is an apt comparison? 100%, Average Joe. You nailed it once again. Goes to the Gozarian says, do you disagree with or agree with Hassan Piker's political opinions? I mostly disagree. I would say that there are a bunch of things that Hassan Piker has said that I think are wildly irresponsible and bad things to have said that I disagree with wholeheartedly. I think that if I sat down with him and we started going through like our policy priorities and like if he and I wrote a Democratic platform, I bet we would agree 99% of things, but I don't think that he is using his platform responsibly. Hassa says, was 9/11 done by the Israelis? No. The Majestic Majest says, how old are you and when did you start to get into politics? I'm 47. I started paying attention to politics in my mid to late 20s. Let's see here. Ainyo Apbob says, do you believe fascism is an umbrella term or one specific ideology like Mussolini's? That's a little over my head. I generally go by like the 14 points of fascism regimes, like attacking the press, attacking higher institutions, consolidating power, staffing the government with loyalists, corruption, territory expansion, stuff like that. Just Be Consistent says, are you only attacking conservatives? I don't attack any voters. Just Be Consistent. But I will not shy away from accurately describing the Republican Party as being psychotic. But that's not voters. That's the politicians, and that's the talking heads, people like Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson. Okay. Paul D. Schreiber says, thoughts on Paper Mario and the Sam Altman Fire/manifesto. So I haven't read the manifesto. I do not condone any kind of violence, whether it is property destruction or assassinations. I think that this is instructive, though, for the billionaire class, for the oligarchs, for the Republican Party. This is what happens when you fuck with people. This is what happens when you stomp on the working class's necks so hard that their only option is to do shit like this, or they feel like their only option is to do things like this. Again, I condemn violence and property destruction in the strongest possible language. But what the fuck did you think was going to happen, man? Okay, Michael Crawford says the only solution for peace in the Middle East is either nukes for all or nukes for none. I say nukes for none, Michael, but don't demand me not ignore your comment, Michael, Okay, Zanman says, do you think separation of power is getting weaker? Oh, yeah, and it's getting weaker because of the Republican Party. Like, they are in control of all three branches of government, so they are allowing Trump to eliminate the separation of power. They are allowing Trump to, get away with eliminating checks and balances. Spira says, who do you think is the most corrupt president? It's got to be Donald Trump. The Mystic Majestic, opinions on the Gaza conflict. I think that Hamas are bad actors. I think the government of Israel are bad actors. But because Israel is a way more powerful and rich nation, it is their responsibility to begin the peace process between Palestine. That is not what they have been doing for a really long time. They have been annexing territory. They have been treating the Palestine like an open-air prison. It's basically a fucking apartheid state. And so, yeah, we need to be putting pressure on the Israeli government to actually start doing their fucking job of building peace in that region instead of just fucking throwing elbows and trying to take over all of their neighbors. Just Be Consistent says, make taxing too big to fail businesses at 80% great again. I am 100% with you. Just Be Consistent. All right, Average Joe says, I've been following the Michigan Senate race while McMorrow has denied taking AIPAC money. She has signaled that she is open to the idea. And Cuck Schumer mentioned he wouldn't mind her getting elected. You do the math. So is it between McMorrow and El Sayed? Is that what the primary comes down to? Because I love Abdul El Sayed. I think he's great. All right, John Abbott says, basically every memo you've heard about telling ICE agents to the Constitution and federal law was written by Lyons. So Lyons told ICE agents to violate the Constitution and federal laws. And so what was he fighting with Stephen Miller about? God damn. Vanessa from Queens says, there's 3 in Michigan, vote Abdul. I think you need to vote for whoever's going to win. The better candidate who is going to win. So I don't know if who's splitting the vote in that election. I do love Abdul El Sayed, but let's see here. User, a whole bunch of numbers, says, what do you think about bail reform? I'm for it. Another Christian Classic says, what do you think about neo-libertarian flangelism? Don't know what that is. Polywalk says, how much influence does Israel control in our government? A lot, but everybody who has a lot of money has a lot of influence in our government, and it is because of policies from the Republican Party that allowed that to happen. Chem Bell says, when do you think you got to finish that question. Paul G. Schreiber says, we need ranked choice voting so we don't have to vote for the lesser of 2 evils. Completely agree with that, Paul D., but I think it's unfair to describe certain Democratic politicians as the lesser of 2 evils. I think we can call them better than worse. I think it's a lot more accurate. Vanessa from Queens says, it's up to us to do the work. Completely agree. Average Joe says, it's a 3-way race, each having 22 to 23% in recent poll. The rest are undecided. What's up, Lost Fat Boy? Appreciate you subscribing. And Haley Stevens, she's pure AIPAC candidate. So yeah, I guess in that case I would go Abdul El Sayed as my number 1, McMorrow is my number 2, And then Haley Stevens, I would not rank at all. Okay, let's see here. Yankees, good to see you again. Says we have to stop subsidizing low-wage businesses and penalize them with punitive taxes. Completely agree with that. Emana Vanelli says, what do you think of Silvio Berlusconi? I don't remember him too much. I'm pretty sure he was a bad guy, though. Paul D. Shriver says, no, time has proven that a lot of Democrats are on the grift from the wealthy and choosing donors first. So I disagree with that, Paul D. Shriver. I think that there are good faith reasons for a lot of things that Democrats do that might make it look like they are on the take. And, you know, I am completely open to the idea that there are some really, really shitty Democrats out there who only care about protecting their own power and their own pocketbook. But if you are doing things like taking APAC money or taking PAC money from any kind of like giant corporation, if you are voting in a way that isn't 100% progressive, like that might not be because they are bought and paid for by the billionaire class. They might be doing that because of where they are currently elected. Like maybe where they are living is more of a purple area, and they are, you know, they were elected to be more of a centrist candidate. Okay. But you know, Paul, that you and I agree on who the better Democrats are. I just think that we need to be cognizant of the fact that not everybody in America agrees with us, and that there are some people who prefer a Chuck Schumer to a Mamdani. I think we need to recognize that there are good faith reasons for doing things like taking APAC money and taking corporate money for running your campaigns. But yeah, if it was up to me, it would all be all Mamdani's and AOC's. Okay, Quirky Berry says thoughts on the war: irresponsible, poorly planned, poorly. I mean, it's executed well because we have an incredible military, but yeah, just Hegseth and Trump are doing such an unbelievably bad job. Okay, Yemi says only good politician in USA is Bernie. That is inaccurate. There are lots of good politicians in America. Just be consistent says AOC takes APAC money. I do not believe that that is accurate. Okay, let's see here. Gozer says, I mean, thems are constantly against the working class. Look at what they did during the Zoran race. I mean, look at what they did during the Biden administration. They walked the picket line. They supported the unions. They broke up monopolies. Like, Gozer, the Democratic Party is the party of the working class. Now, are there individual politicians or individual actions that don't fit that narrative? Sure. But you kind of, the devil's in the details there. You know, like just looking at what they did to Zoran does not sort of like damn the entire Democratic Party, Gozer. All right. John Abbott says, I've not seen reporting on what their fights were about. If job stress was what caused his health issues, it's possible he's the lesser evil, and those memos and policies were forced on him by Miller. Yeah, I find that to be very credible, John Abbott. ZZ says, Jeb 2028. No, fucking all those Bushes need to go away forever. Yankee says, need to vote in the primaries, and these progressive candidates need to get vocal on social media. You know, Yankee, I don't know if it is just messaging that can solve all these problems. You know, like Zoran fucking nailed it. He did an amazing job, but you got other candidates that are just like Zoran who are drowning in social media, and none of their videos are popping off. And so it's like, you know, is it every politician's responsibility to be able to go viral on TikTok, or is it possible that we should help them because the billionaire class has completely captured our media environments? C. Wag says, not being like rude in asking, but do you have a basis? What do you mean by basis, C. Wags? Amo Dio says, nah, Democrat Party moved so far left, it's not recognizable anymore. Trump is a 1980s Democrat. I don't think that's accurate, Amo Dio. A lot of people do not believe the Democratic Party has gone far enough to the left, and some people think they're too centrist. DC, bias. I have a bias in the sense that every human has a bias. CWC Wags. But if you're asking if I am against Republican politicians and for Democratic politicians, if I am that way because I am biased in favor of Democratic politicians, the answer is no. Like, I judge the political parties based on their platform, based on what they have done, based on what they have tried to do, what they say. And by all of those metrics, the Democratic Party is good and the Republican Party is really, really, really bad. Okay, let's see here. Chris 10 says Trump's tax cuts give the richest 5% big breaks while everyone else pays more. That is 100% accurate. C Wag says I didn't even know you supported that. I had just got in. All right, sweet. CW. Paul D. Schreiber says Democrats were great before Reagan and Citizens United. I mean, I think that they're still great Democrats. Paul D. I can list you a whole bunch of Democrats that I think are awesome, and there's more good ones than there are bad ones, in my opinion. Yemi says Dems in USA are like the right party in Spain, and Republicans are like the far right. No one is left. I disagree with that. I know that's a very popular narrative on the internet, Yemi, but I believe that it is inaccurate. DC3 says, ask me anything about politics unless it's something I disagree with. Now you can ask me about things I disagree with, DC3. What's up, little K9? John Abbott says, can I suggest... Oh, no, that's Average Joe. Can I suggest clarifying what is meant by Democrats? There's the base, which is very pro-workers, the party institution, which is pro-corporation, and the politicians, which is divided. So I think that's generally pretty accurate, Average Joe. The only contention that I would have is that the party institution, I don't believe, is as pro-corporation as it is. They have like an older understanding of politics where you appeal to the center in order to win elections. And I agree that that is a stupid political strategy, but I think that there are potentially just as many Democrats who are siding with corporations because they think it's the way that you win, as there are politicians who are pro-corporate because that's how they get their bag. You know, but we're going to always disagree on that, Average Joe. My relationship with Average Joe, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, Average Joe, is that we agree on 99% of shit, but the 1% that we disagree on, we're always going back and forth on. Okay, Yankee Balix, the centrist Democrats are right of center, need more left-leaning pro-worker families, etc. candidates. Yeah, I'm not sure if I would agree with the centrist Democrats where they are exactly, but I agree that we need more left-leaning pro-worker families candidates, 100%. Whether the centrist Democrats are center-left or center-right is not an argument that's not a hill that I need to die on. Okay, Southern Blue Dot says, can you please put out the word to vote? R's are outing after D's taking a pick, not outing Ard. I think I know what you're saying there, Southern Blue Dot, but yeah, everybody should vote. Vote in the primaries, vote in the midterms, vote in the general, vote for every election. The Majest says, do you like Swedish politicians? I don't know anything about Swedish politics. Joe Padilla, great to see you again, says, what did you think of Melania's news conference? So fucking weird. So unbelievably fucking weird. Here's a little treat for you guys. Put any issue that Melania might have an opinion on in the chat, and I will improvise a press conference that she gives. Paul D. Shriver says, we have been pushed to the right for the past 45 years. It's not working. I mean, I agree as a political strategy it's not working, but there are plenty of centrist Democrats who beat progressive candidates in primaries. There are plenty of progressive candidates who lose their general elections, and maybe a centrist would have done better. Paul D., like, I agree with you. You're another one of my Average Joe buddies here who I'm sure we agree on everything except for this 1% of things. I agree with you that the best political strategy you can have is to have a pro 99% platform and to eschew the kind of milquetoast, corporate-friendly centrism of our Chuck Schumer's and Nancy Pelosi's is. But there are very smart people out there who will argue that if you look at the polling, that is not accurate. I disagree with them. There is data to support both political theories. Okay, Majestic Majest says, opinions on Obama Bush. I liked Obama, I didn't like Bush. Flamingo Mo says, doesn't she have opinions on cyberbullying and revenge porn? Oh, Melania? Sure. Cyberbullying is a scourge on our children and their futures. There's a little taste for you guys. All right. Average Joe says, do Melania giving a press conference about the importance of oral herpes medication? Cold sores is a cancer on the future hopes and dreams of our children and their children. Taking your herpes medication, it gives hope to the children and all the wonderful citizens. All right, let's see here. Okay. Paul D. Travers says, that coming from Melania knowing what she knows about Epstein files as well. 100%. The Majestic Majestic says, do you want Hillary Clinton to win the 2016 election? I mean, I wanted Bernie to win the primary, but I did want Hillary to win the 2016. Let's see here. Paul D. Travers, I'm not talking about winning elections. I'm talking about what's good for the working class Americans. Oh, in that case, Paul D., 100% agree. Like, me and you are fully fucking simpatico right there. Like, endorsed, man. Let's put that in the fucking platform and fucking shoot that to the fucking DNC leadership, man. Like, that's that shit. CW Wags asks, what wing do you like more, the older group such as Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, or the younger guys? Oh, the younger guys, 100%. Because the younger politicians are also tend to be more progressive, which is what I am. You know, like I don't think that Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are doing a good job policy wise and like political strategy and messaging wise. Insiders will tell you that behind the scenes they fucking crush it. Like they'll tell you that Pelosi and Schumer are extremely savvy legislators and they're great at whipping votes and getting people together. But I think it's long since time that we need a change of guard in the Democratic Party. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Skippy says, do you think America is the greatest country in the world? I don't think that any country is better than any other country. Certain countries' governments are better than certain other countries' governments, but every country is filled with people, and every human being is great and worthy of respect and sovereignty. Okay, let's see here. Okay, CWAG says, do you like any older Republican policies such as Reagan? I mean, I'm sure, the Republican Party has gotten so extreme over the past 50 years that if you look at, like, Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency. Reagan was pro-immigration. Like, those are good policies. But as we have gone through time, they have just become the worst possible version of what a Republican can be. Paul D. Shriver says, to the person asking, is America the best country on earth? Look up Jeff Daniels' monologue on America on YouTube. Yes, that's from the newsroom. And boy, oh boy, is that accurate as hell. The Majestic says, Biden or current Trump and why? Biden. Like, I know that there were a lot of people that were struggling during the Biden administration, but the Biden administration, the reason why those struggles existed is because of the first Trump administration. And the Biden administration was in the process of, and very successfully, fixing a lot of those problems. They were just not given enough runway to actually kind of like cement those changes, in place. Okay, Alva Hulton says, why do Americans call liberals leftists? There's a bunch of like obscure things in the semantics of what words we use to describe which politicians and political wings of certain political parties. But you could say that like the entire left wing of the American populace, whether they describe themselves as center left or Democrats or liberals or leftists, like they're all leftists because they're on the left side of the spectrum. All right, Max Schmidt says, if they were fixing things, why did the votes sway heavily away from Kamala? That's a really good question, Max. And it as with everything in politics, is very complicated. Everybody has different theories about this. And there were going to be people that tell you that it's because Kamala was too far to the left or too far to the right or doing too much or doing too little. Like, I call the Democratic Party Schrodinger's political party because everybody has every problem with the Democratic Party at all times. They're like too far to the left, too far to the right, doing too much, doing too little, like always. Triska, Kim Buckman, and Chili Willy, thank you so much for helping me reach my third Finger Hearts goal today. And now it is time for High Bears. If we finish 3 High Bear quests, then I will do the Karis Nemec manifesto in my Melania Trump voice. All right, so Max Schmidt, why do I think Kamala and Democrats did so poorly in the 2024 election? Here's my theory of the case. Number one, incumbency bias. Because of the inflation and tax and cost increases that were caused by the Trump administration, everybody who was alive in 2024 was mad at whoever was in charge, even if the people who were in charge did not actually create those problems. So that's number one. And that's probably the biggest one. But another one, and I think that this is underreported and underaccounted for when people do their political commentary, is all of our information environments, be it regular media or social media, are currently owned and manipulated by the billionaire class. And so the billionaire class is flooding all of our information spheres with propaganda to convince people to either not vote or vote for Republican politicians. And I think that that was instrumental in having lower voter turnout and fewer people voting for Democrats over Republicans. Joe Padilla, Connie Sindel, Triska, and Kim Buckman, thank you so much for helping me reach my first high bear goal of the day. Hold on a second. David says, but the majority of billionaires are Democrats. So that is inaccurate. David, would you like some information on why that is inaccurate? Because a lot of times people who put that just want to yell at me and say no. But I'm happy to give you information on why that is inaccurate. Alrighty. Absolutely says, absolutely do a quick search and it is 100% accurate. So no, David, it is not accurate. Again, I ask you, are you open to the idea that you are wrong about this? Or are you just here to say a thing over and over again that is inaccurate in the hopes that everybody believes you? I am Mark says, Trump all day. Wow, what a weird way to spell day. You are definitely not a real person. Tony says, hello, just came across your live and it officially made today the worst day of my life. What a creative way to tell me that you don't agree with me politically, Tony. All right, Katie Blade says, can Bernie Sanders win if he runs for president? I think Bernie Sanders is great. I think he's too old. And I think that nominating Bernie Sanders would be a mistake because we are asking for the exact same issues that we had with Biden. Even though Biden's administration actually was good, Biden, the person, going through mental and physical decline because of his age was extremely damaging to the Democratic Party in 24. Paul D says, I think Bernie should take Chuck Schumer's place in DNC leadership. I wouldn't be against that, Paul D, but maybe we can get a younger person who is similar to Bernie in political philosophy. Tony says, no, I honestly have no idea what your politics are. I just say it to be funny. Well, you got a good chuckle out of me, Tony. That's for darn sure. Okay. Majestic says, Biden or 2016 Trump and why? Biden. Trump is a really, really bad person. He is a really, really bad president. Extremely corrupt, incompetent, uninterested in the details, self-serving, racist, fascist, like everybody except for him. Anybody except for him. Majestic. Goes to the Gozerian says, so who should we nominate? Really good question, Gozer. I'm not 100% sure who wants to run, who's going to run. If I had my druthers, I would have Chris Murphy be president. I think he's a great politician. He's a keep your head down and do your fucking job kind of Democrat, and I think that's great. Tony says, well, I'm here. What's your opinion on National Socialism? So National Socialism, the phrase, I believe, is the way that the popular German party in the 1930s and 40s described themselves. So I think that's kind of a thing we should be avoiding. But if you're talking about like an AOC or a Mamdani, like a democratic socialist, I'm all for it. Alva Hulvin says, why do people vote for Trump? There's a bunch of different reasons. Like, Trump is a corrupt racist who believes in having a right-wing, corrupt, racist, authoritarian government. So some people like those things. Like, there are some people who are like, I'm a racist too. I want there to be fewer brown people in this country. I'm going to vote for Trump. Some people are like, I'm a billionaire who wants my taxes cut, and I want to be able to murder people with poison chemicals from my runoff from my factories. And so I'm going to vote for Trump because he's going to do those things for me. But then there are other people who are like perfectly nice and reasonable people, but they have lived in a information silo for their entire life. And so they believe things that push them towards voting for people that are bad for their own interests. And so, people who've grown up in specific churches or specific regions or under specific families, getting their news from specific Facebook feeds, like those people were tricked. They were conned into voting for Donald Trump. A lot of young people were tricked into voting for Donald Trump in 2024 for a bunch of different reasons that make no sense if you really dig into them. Tony says, I personally feel socialism superior, but don't feel like nationalism is a bad thing either. But correct me if I'm wrong. Like, the Nazi Party was called the National Socialists, right? You know? Mummy Pieko, stop spamming the comments, says, so you are gay. I'm not, but there's also nothing wrong with it. So I've warned you to stop spamming the comments, so you are out of here. You know, I'll tell you who knows I'm not gay. Mummy Pecco is your mom. Uncle Hippie says, do you think one of the main appeals of Trump is he gives them scapegoats to blame their problems on? Oh, yeah, that's the authoritarian's playbook right there. Okay, let's see here. Connie Swindle says, what's your opinion on Mark Kelly? I like Mark Kelly a lot. I think he's great. I would totally vote for him. I would totally vote for him in the general election. Depending on who's running, he might be the candidate that I support in the primary. Paul D. Schreiber says, the problem with our country is not all Trump. Him being gone won't solve everything. 100% agree. Paul D. Schreiber, 100% agree. That is why when I come on here and do these live streams, I am also trying to point out that the Republican Party itself has lost its fucking mind. Like, the platform is bad. The governing history is bad. Like, their one issue is cutting taxes for the rich, cutting regulations for their businesses so that fucking people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk can fly around on their golden private jets, landing on their fucking golden mega yachts, which they sail to one of their billion golden mega mansions. And all their fucking factories, their AI data centers are just fucking vomiting poison chemicals into our water and into our food. While the rest of us fucking struggle. While the rest of us are fucking desperate just to survive. And I don't think that that's a good political philosophy. So I don't think that people should vote for the Republican Party. The Majestic Majest says, is Trump a friend of Putin? I don't know what their actual relationship is. Here's what I would say. I don't know if Trump is a Russian agent or not, but if he was a Russian agent, he would be doing exactly what he's doing right now. All right, Katie Blake says, still love that hat. Oh, are you talking about my hat, Katie Blake? The one that I made? Let me know. Tony says, yeah, but they weren't real National Socialists. That was just fascism. Yeah, but I think we should try to stay away from phrases and titles that the Nazis used. You know, like America First was actually the slogan of the American Nazi Party during World War II. So that's part of the reason why I think we shouldn't use that expression. Jack says, neither party should get votes. Completely disagree with that, Jack. Would you like me to make the case for the Democratic Party to you? Because I'm happy to. Zay Kazu says, do you think that communism could work? I think it just depends on how you define it. You know, the devil's in the details. Like, I think policies that give workers more powers could be described as communist, and I think those are great policies. But if you're asking me, like, should no human being be able to own anything and the state owns everything and apportions it out to everybody based on their needs, like, that seems a little drastic to me. Like, I think that we should have a little bit more sovereignty and liberty than that. Tony says, opinions on AIPAC. I'm against them. Goes with the Gozerian says, Herron couldn't buy a vote in 2020 primaries, and then they ran her for president. So they didn't run Kamala Harris for president. Goes with the Gozerian. What do you think that the Democratic Party in general, I'm talking about the DNC, Harris, Chuck Schumer, etc., what do you think they should have done when Biden dropped out of the race with 107 days left until the election? Jack says, no, both parties are awful. Dem is the worst, most corrupt, but I'm open to hearing to your opinion. So, Jack, it's difficult for me to talk to you about this because just based on the way that you phrase that, it sounds like you're pretty cemented in your opinion about Democrats being the worst, most corrupt. And I just think that that is wildly inaccurate. Like, the Democratic Party has raised taxes on the billionaire class. They have used that money to make everybody's life better. They have passed bills to rebuild our infrastructure, to support the unions. They broke up monopolies. They lowered healthcare costs. They invested the most money in renewable energy in our nation's history. Like, you know, like if that's corrupt, like, fucking give me more of that fucking corruption, you know? Like, you know, what? I don't know how you can argue that they are the most corrupt and the worst party when they did all that great shit, you know? Anthony M says, pull them up, show us evidence. If you ever want evidence for the things that I'm saying, just send me a DM. I'll shoot you the article. I don't have the articles memorized, and even if I did, you'd probably say that they were fake. The Majestic Majest, is Zelensky a good president? I think so, but I don't live there, so I don't know. Michael Anthony says, on what you mentioned yesterday, is there actual practicality in getting rid of the Electoral College? Oh, 100%, Michael Anthony. In fact, we are closer today than we have maybe ever been in the history of American politics. There was almost a constitutional amendment to get rid of it back in I think that was like in the 1920s or something. But right now, there's a thing, and everybody fucking get your fucking pens and papers out here, you know? There's a thing called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact says that a state can decide to give their electoral votes to the candidate who wins the popular vote, which would essentially get rid of the Electoral College. Now, a bunch of states have already signed up for this. It doesn't activate until they have enough electoral votes committed to actually sway the election, which would be 271 electoral votes. As of now, they have committed or in the process of committed 267 electoral votes. So all we need is one more state that has more than 3 electoral votes to sign up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and then the Electoral College is gone. No more every single presidential election is focused exclusively in the 10 swing states. No more Republican California getting thrown in the garbage. No more votes for president in Alabama getting. Everybody's votes for president will equal exactly the same as everybody else's vote for president. It will re-enfranchise voters. It will make people feel like there's a reason to get out there. And I think that's better. I think that's a lot better than the system that we have here. Alrighty. So yeah, if you live, I'm just going to list off a bunch of states that I think are really gettable for signing up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. So if you live in Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, or New Hampshire, get on the phone with your state reps and tell them that you want to sign up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Jack says, both parties are corrupt. They all do the same in different ways. They are the same example walls. So, Jack, I believe that you have a wildly inaccurate idea of what the parties have done, what their platforms are, and Tim Walz very specifically. Are you open to the idea that you are wrong about this? Because the corruption of Trump is way worse than anything on the left. And I do not believe that there is any evidence that Walz is engaged in any kind of corruption. That is a right-wing propaganda narrative that has been debunked time and time again. So, Jack, I'm begging you, man, like, tell me that you are open to the idea that you're wrong about this, you know? All right, Yemi says, is there any politic in the U.S. that's pushing for free universal health care? Yes, those politicians are all in the Democratic Party. Not every elected Democrat or Democratic talking head is advocating for universal health care, but the politicians who are all in the Democratic Party. Yemi says, who are those? That's AOC, that's Mamdani, that's Bernie Sanders, I believe that's Chris Murphy, that's Elizabeth Warren, that's I believe that's Josh Shapiro and Andy Beshear and Tellerico and Crockett. More than I can name, you know? The Majestic Majest, I see that you're Ukrainian. Welcome. All right, Jack, ask me a question then about the two political parties, because I already gave you a bunch of examples of Democrats being a way better political party than the Republican Party. So ask me a question, and let's get into it. Paul D. Schreiber says, there are maybe a dozen Democrats at the national level pro-universal health care. I believe that there's more than that, Paul D. Without having done the math myself, I just firmly believe that there are more than that. Jack says, what Trump is doing right now is very corrupt. I'm not disagreeing. But you think that there is equally corrupt shit happening in the Democratic Party. That is, I think, wildly inaccurate. Like, Trump is actively selling political pardons. He is selling them for money. That has never happened before. There have been, like, sketchy political pardons, like Obama and Biden, of course, and Clinton. They did some political pardons from people that had, like, contributed to their campaign or buddies or something like that. But nobody has just ever before been like, give me $5 million and I will let you out of jail no matter what your fucking crime was, you know? Like, that is wildly different. That is wildly different. Jacob says, yes, the Democrats don't have any corruption. Never said that, Jacob. That's what we call a straw man argument. Yemi says, you need to get rid of the conservative part of the Democratic Party to progress as a country. So I agree with that, Yemi, but not everybody in America does. Some people like the centrist wing of the Democratic Party. And I think it's really important that we recognize that. Not everybody in America agrees with us. So we need to make the case. And if we are unsuccessful in making our case, then our job is to vote for better over worse. Jack says, I disagree with that too. Well, Jack, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, it's like we're living in two completely different realities then. Like, I don't see how you can say that both parties are equally bad when the Republican Party cuts taxes for the wealthy and the Democratic Party increases taxes for the wealthy. Paul Schreiber says, that's why we need a third political party, a working class labor party. That already exists in the Democratic Party, Paul. And without ranked choice voting, any third party would only be a spoiler candidate for the Democrats. So what do? We change the party from within. We do the work of replacing the Democrats that are the corporate centrists that we don't like. But here's the thing. There are maybe a lot of people out there in this country who think I would rather have a Chuck Schumer than a Bernie Sanders. So we need to make the case to those people. That is our job as the progressives in this country. That's not the DNC's job. That is our job. And if we are successful, then we get really awesome candidates like AOC, like Tallarico, like Bernie Sanders. If we fail, then it is our job then to make sure that better candidates win those seats than worse candidates. Because, yeah, I wanted Katie Porter to win the Senate primary in California, but when she didn't, I fucking happily voted for Adam Schiff over whatever fucking Republican ding-dong was running for that seat. Paul D says, okay, that seems a bit naive considering how hard they fight progressive candidates. No, I 100% agree. The DNC does put their finger on the scale to try to hurt progressive Democrats. But they're only allowed to do that because there are more centrist Democrats that win their elections than progressive Democrats who win their elections. Now, some Democrats, I'm sure, are fight young progressives because they're trying to maintain a stranglehold on their own political power. And obviously those people suck and we should primary them and get them the fuck out of there. You know, you're never going to hear me arguing against voting in the primary against those politicians. But we, the voters, have the ultimate say. Like, if you and I can convince enough people to vote for the progressives over the centrists, then we change the Democratic Party. Like, done and done, man. And I will say this also. I don't think that the Democratic Party, the DNC, putting their finger on the scale, has ever swayed an election. Otherwise, Barack Obama would not have been president. But if you look at 2016, Hillary Clinton fucking ran away with that. That was not the DNC putting their finger on the scale. Nobody gives a shit about the fucking who the DNC wanted their candidate to be. People voted for Hillary Clinton en masse. Same thing happened with Biden in 2020. More people voted for him. A lot more people voted for him. Jack says they shouldn't have appointed Kamala either. Should have been a primary. With 107 days left in the election, Jack, do you really think that was the move? Do you really think that would have been at all physically fucking possible? Goes of the Gozerian says, super delegate nonsense. Yes, I agree. And then the Democratic Party heard that criticism, and then they got rid of their super delegates. Next question, guys. Okay, Majestic Majest says, why do you think Trump is a racist fascist? He has a history of doing racist shit, and he's doing all of the fascist playbook shit, which is attacking institutions of higher learning, attacking the media, consolidating power, hiring loyalists, firing everybody who doesn't toe the party line, corruption, aligning with other authoritarians around the globe. Josh says, what do you think about My Body, My Choice? I am for it. You do whatever you want with your body, Josh. Yemi says, is Kamala progressive or conservative? I don't know. We have never actually got to see Kamala, legislate. it's my belief that she's more progressive than she has campaigned, but I don't know. I'm not going to die on that hill. Jack says they knew Biden was not able to do the job way before that. Don't be ignorant. Jack, you're coming off as somebody who's trying to fight. So please take down the temperature a little bit. Did you? Because I read the book about who knew that Biden was in mental decline. And the answer was only his family and his inner circle. So Chuck Schumer didn't know. Nancy Pelosi didn't know. So yeah, you're not going to be able to convince me because I've actually done the research. Paul D. Schreiber says, come on. And Tim could have won by appealing to the working class, but they ran to the right. What do you mean by Tim, Paul? Let me know about that. Free Will Fit says, we all knew he was in mental decline. I didn't. Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Ghost says, like, I'm not knocking anyone, but why are left-wing men so feminized? You know who doesn't think this left-wing man is feminized? Your mom. Scarlett says, how do you feel about Trump? One of the worst presidents of all time, insanely corrupt, incompetent, not intelligent. Free Will Fit says, you were willfully ignorant then. That's not a nice thing to say. You're in question jail. Okay, let's see here. All right, guys, we're at an hour 15. I got to start wrapping things up. Goes to the Gary and says Kamala was hated by Republicans and Democrats. I mean, maybe. You know, you kind of just proved my point there that America is prejudiced against left-wing candidates. Your local propane guy says, will we ever have someone else win other than Republican or Democrats? If we get ranked choice voting, and we can only get ranked choice voting by voting for Democrats. Okay, Paul D says Kamala is conservative. I disagree, Paul. I disagree. Okay, Reed Michael says, you ignore all the hard questions, Skippy. Don't call me that. That's the only my sexual partners are allowed to call me that. Jack says, I disagree, sir. I'm just here to have a pleasant convo. We should all be able to talk and disagree. I mean, but there are facts, Jack, and you are disagreeing with facts. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you. All right, everybody. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for all of your support, your questions, your comments, your gifts. If you want to support the channel financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we're all struggling. But if you have the dollars and you want to give them my way because you think that what I am doing here is positive and good, then the mechanisms are available. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, then you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. $10 gives you access to the monthly gardening thoughts, which is a value at twice the price. If there are any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, please reach out to me. I want to be a resource for you guys to use to be more involved and more informed about politics. So if there's any way that I can do that for you, please do so. Use me and abuse me. Use me until I'm all used up. DMs are open. You can also email me through my website. You can also hit me up on my Discord channel. The Discord channel is also great because there's a community there of awesome people. There's also recommendations there for civic actions that you can take. Great groups to join like Indivisible or Run for Something or Vote Save America or Swing Left. There's also recommendations there for books and podcasts. And I've got a link to all those books that you can buy from bookshop.org so that we're supporting independent bookstores and not just Amazon Prime. So, yeah. So join the Discord. Get in touch. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Tree. All right. Cool. We're just going to skip that comment there. All right, John Abbott says, organizing presidential primaries takes 5 to 6 months and conducting them takes another 2 to 3 months. A primary would have found us a candidate about half a year after the general election. That is 100% accurate, John Abbott. All right, everybody. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again for being here. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. Do the work. Doing the work is the only way that we get out of this. There are good people in the government. There are good people in the Department of Justice, but they need our help because they do not have the resources and they do not have the political power to solve all these problems by themselves. So do the work. do the work, and we will get out of this. I promise you that. All right. Have an excellent weekend, everybody. I will see you guys on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.